Welcome back to Tightwad Workshop. I've now owned this little car for 1 year and 14,000 kilometres, and this weekend I have a few errands to do that means I'm going to have to take a 1400 kilometre road trip. That's about 870 miles if you're a user of Freedom units. Once we get back from this road trip, I'll finish this video off with a traditional 1 year ownership review segment. If you're not interested in the road trip, then feel free to just click ahead to this point in the video to get straight to the review. Well, we've got a long way to travel today, so let's get about it. The first leg of our trip will be a 250 kilometre drive from Canberra to Wagga Wagga. If you live in a proper big city, you might be interested to know that this is what we call rush hour here in Canberra. Once we get out of town, the trip to Wagga Wagga is all along highways and freeways, the sort of drive where you set the cruise control and get to your destination as efficiently as possible. It's a little dull, but don't worry, there's going to be some much more interesting bits soon. I made a stop at the Royal Australian Air Force Base at Wagga Wagga to visit some old friends. Now if you've grown up around these parts, you'll already know that you should never call Wagga Wagga Wagga. But just in case you're not a local, I thought I should mention it, to avoid any future embarrassment that might cause. Just to make this more complicated, we're recharging at the BP Pulse station in Gumley, which is a suburb of Wagga Wagga. I recharged 33 kilowatt hours, which cost $23.87. Once I'd recharged enough to reach my next stop, I needed to head into Wagga Wagga to drop off a package to one of our subscribers. According to his family, Dodo is even more thrifty than myself, so extracting money from him is an event worth recording in a photo. Once that errand was complete, I set off along the back roads to our next stop at The Rock. The Rock is one of those places that just underlines Australia's very literal approach to place names. Our next stop is to a town I've been meaning to visit for about 40 years, Henty, New South Wales. In this part of the country they farm wheat and solar power. I'm not sure which of the two is more lucrative at the moment though. Henty's claim to fame is being the hometown of Hedley Taylor, who was the inventor of a revolutionary new form of combine harvester for grain crops in the early 1900s. The town's constructed this building around his original blacksmith shop, and it's a worthwhile stop if you're interested in vintage machinery. There's also a private museum across the road which contains several early versions of his machine, and it lets you see the rapid changes in its design over its first few years. I also found a shop selling various old rusty tools, and I spent some of Dodo's money on this little railway track anvil. After leaving Henty, I set off to travel to Mike's house in Benalla for the night, following the back roads again. This is a part of the country with lots of flat land and straight roads. They grow a lot of wheat and hay around here. I added 35 kilowatt hours to the car overnight from Mike's charger and paid him the $10 it would have cost him. He didn't want to accept the money, but he'll find it in a day or two. I made an early start on Saturday and set off on the next leg of the journey to Healesville. The first part of this leg was relatively flat and straight, but once you get past Lake Eildon, the road becomes the much more interesting Black Spur route. Anytime that you see one of these signs, it's usually a good indication of a fun road for motorcycling. After recharging another 31 kilowatt hours for $22.76 at Healesville, I got back on the road for today's final leg to Churchill. This leg is mostly main roads and highways again. I've come here to attend Andy's 60th birthday party, and since his grandchildren are here, I'll keep the event private. I'll be sleeping in the car tonight, under an old horse blanket. Andy said that he very much liked the box of old hand tools that I gave him for his birthday present. Today's going to be a big day, so I made an early start and headed for the fast charger at Traralgon. I charged up to 90% here because our next charger at Buchan is only a medium-speed 20 kilowatt machine. Buchan is where things are going to start getting interesting, although I'm sure the young people of Buchan, just like the young people of everywhere else, think that their hometown's the dullest place on earth. Unfortunately, somebody had parked their ice car in the charger bay when I arrived, but luckily the cable was long enough to reach my car. Since my next available charger is 185 kilometres away at Jindabyne, and the road we are taking is a fairly rugged track over the mountains, I charged up to an indicated 225 kilometres of range before setting off. The first few kilometres north from Buchan is a sealed road, but then it becomes a dirt road, and after a few kilometres it enters the national park. I last came this way 18 years ago when I was a bit skinnier and a lot fitter. Once you get into the national park, the road gets a lot more interesting, especially the descent into Buchan. And you'd better enjoy slow, narrow, rough and winding dirt roads, because that's what you're going to get for the next 96 kilometres. You need to budget about 4 hours to travel the 180 kilometres between Buchan and Jindabyne on this route. It's a little rough, but it can easily be done in a two-wheel drive vehicle, unless the weather is very wet. This road runs alongside the Snowy River for about 20 kilometres, and there are quite a few campsites available. But if you want to use one, you'll need to pre-book on the Parks Victoria or New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service websites. It depends on whether your desired campsite's in New South Wales or Victoria. Eventually I made it back out of the national park and arrived at Jindabyne. This will be our last recharge stop before arriving home, which is 230 kilometres away. The first 80 kilometres is along another good sealed road to Jindabyne for a comfort stop at the Big Trout. From Jindabyne we now have an 80 kilometre leg to cover to Tharwa, and about half of this distance is on dirt roads. But the final 35 kilometres into Tharwa is along a nice sealed mountain road. Once we get to the very welcome site of the Tharwa Bridge, we just have a few more kilometres to travel to Canberra's most southerly roundabout, and then home. Our road trip covered a total distance of 1,425 kilometres and used a total of 157 kilowatt hours of electricity at a total price of $97.97. I'll take care of unpacking the car tomorrow, or maybe the next day. The orange paint on this car is very good at hiding the dirt, but after this road trip there's definitely plenty of it there. In this situation I usually start with a pre-wash using a bucket of plain water and a cloth. This is usually more effective than vacuuming for getting rid of the dust. I need to do this clean-up around the rear hatch and around all 4 of the doors. That water's pretty dirty now, but we can still use it one more time to clean the wheels. On second thoughts, I'll just hit the wheels with the hose jet first. I'm not going to bother with fully polishing up the wheels, since the hubcaps will be covering them back up anyway. Our final pre-wash step is a bit controversial. I use dishwashing liquid to remove the bugs from the front of the car, and this dishwashing liquid is yellow rather than orange. Never mind the critics though, hot water and dishwashing liquid will clean those sticky bug parts off with very little effort. The next stage of our car wash is a lot less controversial, because this time the liquid's the correct colour for the car. I like to start at the top of the car, then work my way around it. Then I'll finish off with a rinse spray from the hose. This hose spraying only uses about 1 bucket of water, but it looks like more when it's running down into the gutter. Eventually we can refit the hubcaps, clean the glass, and vacuum the inside of the car, using its own power outlet for the vacuum cleaner. Okay, so now that all of our preparations are complete, we can get started on the 1-year review. Let's start with some likes and dislikes. Now, of course, the thing that I like the most is that when I'm able to charge the car using my own solar panels, I'm effectively paying $1.60 per 100 kilometres in fuel, because that's the price I'd otherwise get for that power if I was selling it back to the grid. The next thing that I like is the smooth, quiet ride. Unlike most of my previous cars, I don't have to turn the radio up to 11 to be able to hear it over the car and engine noise. The performance and handling's quite good by my standards too, but of course that's quite subjective. I'm not a sports car driver. If you are though, you're probably going to find the performance of this bottom-of-the-range poverty package model a little bit underwhelming. Moving on to dislikes, I really like little cars, but this one can be a bit of a problem to get in and out of for me when my back's feeling a bit creaky. It's not an issue for me in my own driveway, but in tight parking spaces in shopping centre car parks it can be a bit of a difficulty. This car's 300 kilometre usable range is more than enough for the 90% of driving that I do around town, but it can be a little bit of a limitation out on the road on a road trip. Now that's entirely my fault. I could easily have spent a bit more money and got a higher spec model with 450 kilometres of range, so that would have made it not a problem at all. And finally, I'm really not a fan of the lane keep assist feature on this car. Even set to its lowest triggering sensitivity, it's constantly going off, and it's quite an aggressive grabbing of the steering wheel, as though you've got a panicky passenger sitting next to you. Now, I'm aware that pretty much every new car these days has this feature, but I'd be a lot happier if there was an option for turning it off altogether. On the whole though, I'm really satisfied with this car, and I think I'll stick with my original plan of hanging on to it for 10 years. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Tightwad Workshop is filmed in front of a live studio audience.